sick. Like, this, it's gotta go, y'all. I'm tired. Tired. I go into Office Max, have to pick up some things. I'm walking out the door, y'all, mask on and everything, okay? Because, you gotta wear your mask in the store. And that's fine.
This is Roseanne McCulley, a 34-year-old mother of 3 from Missouri, photographed just moments before her life would be violently and senselessly taken. Only hours earlier, Roseanne had shared a deeply disturbing post on Facebook, one that would later read like a desperate warning. In it, she bravely revealed the injuries she had suffered during a domestic dispute that had grown increasingly dangerous. She didn't sugarcoat the pain. She shared photos. She shared words filled with fear, exhaustion, and heartbreak. It was clear she was reaching a breaking point. What Roseanne could never have imagined was that speaking her truth publicly, asking for help in the only way she felt she could, would tragically become the final chapter of her life. On the night of March 5, 2021, a frantic 911 call sent police racing toward a home in what appeared to be a quiet, ordinary neighborhood. Reports indicated that a woman and her children were being held captive inside. But nothing could have prepared the responding officers for what they were about to encounter. When detectives entered the home, they were met with a scene of unimaginable horror. Roseanne lay lifeless on the floor, multiple times at close range. Her body told the story of a brutal and deliberate attack. Her children had not been spared. 2 of them had also been Yet even in that moment of devastation, the nightmare was far from over. 1 child was missing, taken from the home, their whereabouts completely unknown. Panic set in as officers realized the danger was still unfolding in real time. What could possibly have led to such unspeakable violence? What chain of events could turn a family home into a crime scene soaked in tragedy? As detectives began piecing together fragmented clues, messages, and witness accounts, a shocking truth slowly emerged. One that no one truly expected, yet one that, in hindsight, carried haunting warning signs. But before we reach that dreadful night, it's important to go back and understand how this heartbreaking story truly began. At first glance, Roseanne McCulley, known lovingly as Rosie to her friends and family, was a talented, creative, and warm-hearted woman whose world revolved entirely around her children and her art. She had a gentle spirit and a vibrant personality that drew people in. Yet beneath that warmth and creativity was a painful reality that very few people fully understood. At just 34 years old, Rosie was a devoted mother of 3 children, 13-year-old Caden, 6-year-old Kaylee, and her youngest daughter, who was just 1 year old at the time. Everything Rosie did began and ended with her children. She worked tirelessly to give them love, stability, and a sense of joy, often putting her own needs far behind theirs. Her life was built around protecting them, nurturing them, and making sure they felt safe and cherished. Tragically, she would never get the chance to watch them grow into the people she dreamed they would become. By day, Rosie worked as a customer service claims lead at Centene Corporation, where she was known as dependable, hardworking, and dedicated. Her coworkers respected her strong work ethic and her ability to handle responsibility. But when the workday ended, Rosie's creativity came alive. She poured her heart into her small business, Glitter on 8th, where she designed and sold personalized cups, shoes, and birthday cakes. Every item she made reflected her love for creativity and her desire to bring happiness to others. Each piece wasn't just a product, it was personal, crafted with care and intention. But Rosie was far more than a hardworking mother and talented artist. She was sweet, funny, and sarcastic in the most charming way. She had a laugh that filled rooms and a presence that made people feel comfortable and seen. Her kindness lingered long after she walked away, leaving a lasting impression on everyone she met. Friends described her as loving, loyal, and endlessly giving, even when she herself was struggling. Behind the smiles and outward strength, however, a much darker reality followed Rosie home. Long before wedding vows were ever exchanged, her relationship with 42-year-old Bobby McCulley was already marked by violence and control. In 2017, Rosie had filed a domestic violence complaint against him. But like so many victims trapped in abusive relationships, she ultimately chose not to move forward with charges. Without her cooperation, authorities said there wasn't enough evidence to continue, and the case was dropped. In hindsight, that moment stands as a chilling foreshadowing of the pain and danger that would follow. Despite the warning signs, Rosie stayed. She held on to hope, believing things could change. On July 29, 2018, Rosie and Bobby were married. To friends and family who attended the wedding, Rosie appeared genuinely happy. She smiled, laughed, and embraced what she believed was a fresh start. Bobby seemed to accept Rosie's two older children, Caden and Kaylee, stepping into a father figure role in their lives. Although he had several children from previous relationships, the family appeared to be blending, and those close to them hoped for the best. It was a moment full of promise, but also quiet uncertainty. Soon after, the family grew again. Rosie and Bobby welcomed a daughter together, naming her Zoe. Rosie embraced motherhood once more, determined to keep her family together and believing that unity and love could somehow overcome the problems beneath the surface. But marriage did not bring peace. Behind closed doors, the abuse continued and worsened. Still, Rosie fought to hold her family together for the sake of her children, hoping patience, love, or time might finally break the cycle. Eventually, the pain became impossible to hide. Rosie began sharing the truth publicly. She posted disturbing and emotional accounts on social media, revealing the violence she was enduring. In one post, she described being assaulted so severely that she had to be hospitalized. She spoke of bruising, swelling, and injuries caused by being stomped on in her chest and abdomen. Those words shocked many who read them. But that post was only the beginning. In another message, Rosie revealed what appeared to trigger the violence: refusing Bobby's sexual advances. That refusal, she said, led to a brutal beating. Desperate for safety, Rosie explained that she had put Bobby out of the house, hoping that drawing a line would finally bring relief. Instead, the situation spiraled further out of control. Just one day later, Rosie shared another heartbreaking update. After medical examinations, doctors found extensive bruising, painful lumps, and abrasions across her body. She would need X-rays to rule out internal injuries. In her caption, Rosie reflected on the physical pain and emotional toll the abuse was taking on her. She admitted she could no longer hide the truth. Her words were raw, honest, and filled with fear. That post became a cry for help, one that resonated deeply with those who had quietly watched her struggle. As her messages grew more urgent, it became tragically clear that Bobby's threats were not empty words at all. If you're finding these stories meaningful or informative, please consider subscribing to our channel. It really helps us keep bringing you more content like this. On February 23, 2022, just 2 days after her previous post, Rosie shared yet another update with her followers. This time, her words carried an even heavier sense of fear and desperation. She revealed that the situation had not improved. In fact, it had grown worse. By this point, what Rosie was enduring was no longer something happening quietly behind closed doors. Her pain, her fear, and her reality were now being witnessed by the world in real time. Friends, family, and even strangers were watching as the situation continued to unravel. Yet, as disturbing as this already was, it still wasn't the end. 4 days later, on February 27th, Rosie made another post that would later take on a chilling significance. In it, she explained that she was moving Bobby's belongings into a storage unit, a clear sign that she was taking steps to separate herself from him and reclaim control of her life. But what happened next shocked everyone following her story. Bobby, the very person responsible for Rosie's suffering, appeared directly in the comments of her Facebook post. His response was cold, disturbing, and completely devoid of remorse. He wrote that since everyone was enjoying the show, they should stay tuned, implying that more was coming. The comment sent a wave of unease through those who read it. To many, it felt like a threat hiding in plain sight. For those who had been following Rosie's posts closely, it marked a terrifying shift, signaling that the danger was escalating. What no one realized at the time was that this comment wasn't just cruel or attention-seeking. It was a warning of something far more sinister. On the night of March 5, 2022, just days after that chilling comment, Bobby McCulley's violence reached a deadly breaking point. Rosie had finally made the decision to end her marriage and leave him for good, a decision that triggered an explosive and dangerous escalation. In the days leading up to that night, Bobby had been threatening her relentlessly. He told her that if she left him or if she brought another man into her life, he would kill her. Despite those terrifying threats, Rosie continued forward, believing she had no other choice if she wanted to protect herself and her children. That night, Bobby turned his threats into action. Around 9 p.m., a neighbor noticed a suspicious individual lingering near Rosie's home and immediately called the police. Officers arrived and searched the area but were unable to locate anyone or find evidence of a break-in. For a brief moment, it may have seemed like the danger had passed. But just 3 hours later, multiple shots echoed from the direction of Rosie's house. Another frantic 911 call was placed, reporting gunfire. Police rushed back to the scene, where they noticed a broken window at the home. As they entered and searched the house, they made a discovery that would haunt them forever. Inside, officers found the bodies of Rosie, her 13-year-old son Caden, and her 6-year-old daughter Kaylee. They had all been brutally murdered. As investigators worked through the scene, they realized that something was even more wrong. Rosie's 1-year-old daughter was missing. It became clear that Bobby McCulley had not only murdered his wife and 2 of her children, but had also abducted their infant daughter. What had begun as psychological abuse and control had now escalated into cold-blooded murder. His threats, his violent history, and even his disturbing social media behavior had all been warning signs, but no one could have imagined the full extent of the horror that would unfold. An Amber Alert was issued immediately. Law enforcement agencies across the region mobilized, desperately searching for the missing child. At the same time, police launched a full-scale manhunt for Bobby McCulley, who was now charged with kidnapping and multiple counts of murder. As investigators dug deeper, it became painfully clear that this crime was not an isolated incident, but the tragic culmination of years of violence. Just hours before the murders, police had already been investigating Bobby for a domestic violence incident involving Rosie. He had filed for divorce only days earlier, and Rosie had begun removing his belongings from their shared home, signaling the final collapse of the relationship. Further investigation revealed that Bobby's violent behavior did not begin with Rosie. His criminal history included multiple incidents of domestic violence involving other women. In one case, he had been convicted of false imprisonment and sentenced to probation. Despite this documented history, he was still able to carry out this devastating act. Authorities labeled Bobby as armed and extremely dangerous. As the search intensified, police contacted his family members in hopes of learning where he might be hiding. After several tense and agonizing hours, Bobby finally dropped off the 1-year-old child at a relative's home. Miraculously, the baby was unharmed. While she was physically safe, the emotional trauma of losing her mother and siblings would remain with her for the rest of her life. With the child now accounted for, law enforcement focused fully on locating Bobby. They believed it was only a matter of time before he would be found, but they had no idea how the search would end. The following day, Bobby McCulley was discovered dead inside his car near his mother's home in North St. Louis. Investigators determined that as police closed in on him, Bobby had taken his own life, choosing death over facing the consequences of his actions. While he would never stand trial for the crimes he committed, his death marked the end of a horrific chapter for Rosie's family, one defined by fear, loss, and irreversible heartbreak. While it is often a source of relief for victims' families when a perpetrator is arrested and held accountable in a courtroom, this case unfolded very differently. With Bobby's death, justice was denied in a way that left Rosa's family and friends deeply conflicted. For some, there was anger that he never had to face the consequences of his actions before a judge or jury. For others, there was an overwhelming sense of emptiness, knowing they would never have the opportunity to confront him, hear answers, or see him formally held responsible for the devastation he caused. His death closed the legal case, but it did nothing to heal the emotional wounds left behind. As news of the murders spread, the local community was shaken to its core. Friends, neighbors, and acquaintances of Rosie and her children struggled to comprehend how such violence could happen so close to home. Many spoke publicly, expressing disbelief, heartbreak, and profound sorrow over the senseless loss of life. They remembered Rosie as a kind, loving, and genuinely warm person. She was often described as sweet and funny, with a creative spirit that shined through everything she did. Above all, people remembered how deeply she loved her children and how much of her life revolved around them. For those who knew her, the loss was almost impossible to process. Rosie wasn't just another name in a headline. She was a mother, a neighbor, a friend, someone overflowing with compassion, warmth, and untapped potential. People struggled to understand how someone so loving, so devoted to her children, could be taken in such a brutal and violent way. The grief that followed was heavy and widespread. One neighbor captured the collective heartbreak perfectly, saying, "My prayers, my family prayers go out to the family. I hate that this even happened to them." Those words echoed throughout the community, where disbelief quickly turned into mourning and unanswered questions. Several neighbors recalled seeing Rosie just days before the murders. Some remembered her outside with her children, laughing, talking, and sharing moments that felt painfully ordinary at the time. She looked like any other mother spending time with her kids, present, attentive, and loving. No one could have known that danger was already closing in around her. Those memories, once so normal, now feel haunting. The suddenness of the crime left neighbors shattered, mourning not only Rosie but also Caden and Kaylee, 2 innocent children whose lives were cut short far too soon. One neighbor, who chose not to be identified, spoke through tears about the loss. "It's a tragedy," they said. "Rosie was a beautiful, beautiful soul. Both those kids were beautiful. She did not deserve this, not one bit." Their words reflected the disbelief shared by so many who knew the family.
For that to happen this close to home, excuse me for crying, they didn't deserve that. Very beautiful young lady. The kids were very manageable. Trying all, I ain't even been asleep. I was trying to get some sleep, you know. I'm devastated.
My prayers, my family prayers go out to the family. I hate this even happened to the family.
Another neighbor recalled the terrifying moments as the tragedy unfolded. "When I woke up, I heard screaming and yelling and loud banging," she said. "Rosie's lights flickered 3 times. I called her phone twice and she didn't answer. I knew something was wrong. Trusting her instincts, she called 911. Police arrived and initially searched the area but didn't find anything. Then everything changed. They went to the back of the house," she continued, "and then they came running back to the front with their guns drawn, yelling, 'It's the police.' They kicked the door open and her body was laying right there at the front door." Her voice shook as she described the moment reality set in. "By the time I heard everything and they got here, it was too late. It was too late for her and the kids." Those final moments would haunt the neighborhood forever. What began as a normal night ended in devastation, leaving behind a trail of grief, shock, and painful questions that may never fully be answered.
She had a lot of people that just loved her because she was such a sweet person. He assaulted her like really badly. I said, I need you to leave the house. I don't care where you go. I need you to get out of there. And I'm calling. She didn't answer. And I sent her a text message. That is a sick, sadistic individual. St. Louis is going to miss an extraordinary woman.
Losing a loved one to violence is always devastating, but for Rosie's family, the pain was overwhelming. Her mother was left inconsolable, struggling to process the loss of her daughter and 2 grandchildren in a single night. What made it even harder to accept was knowing that police had been investigating Bobby just hours before the murders, yet no arrest came in time. To the family, justice felt painfully delayed. In the days that followed, Rosie's loved ones began speaking out, urging others to take domestic violence seriously and to seek help before it's too late. Rosie's case exposed just how badly the system can fail victims, even when there are clear and repeated warning signs. At a candlelit memorial, family and friends gathered to honor Rosie and her children. Tears were shed, memories were shared, and one message stood out clearly: this tragedy must lead to change. Many hoped Rosie's story would become a wake-up call for faster, stronger responses when victims reach out for help. The case drew widespread attention, but justice remained complicated. Bobby's suicide meant there would be no trial, no sentencing, and no real accountability. Instead, it raised troubling questions about how domestic violence cases are handled, especially given his documented history of abuse. Rosie's family and victim advocates pushed for reform, calling for stricter enforcement of domestic violence laws, better protection for victims, and stronger communication between survivors and law enforcement. Although Bobby was never brought to court, his mother, Michelle Clayton, did face consequences. Investigators revealed she had misled police to protect her son, leading to her arrest on felony obstruction of justice charges. Her bond was set at $25,000, highlighting the complex aftermath of the crime.
Another woman, Michelle Clayton, is facing charges in this case. A probable cause statement says she misled and lied to police, preventing McCauley's arrest.
Despite the horrific ending, Rosie's legacy lives on. Her story has become a powerful reminder of the dangers of ignoring abuse and the lasting impact it has on families and communities. Close friend Stephanie St. John, who spoke with Rosie just hours before her death, continues to share her story, urging others to act when they see the signs of abuse, before it's too late. Despite their unbearable grief, Rosie's family has worked tirelessly to keep her memory alive. They honor her through vigils, advocacy efforts, and by speaking openly about the realities of domestic violence. Their hope is that by sharing Rosie's story, they can prevent other families from experiencing the same devastating heartbreak. Rosie McCauley's case, like so many others, shines a harsh light on how widespread domestic violence truly is and the devastating consequences it can have. Experts agree that domestic violence is often underreported, with many victims too afraid to come forward out of fear of retaliation or escalation. That is why it is crucial for friends, family members, co-workers, and neighbors to remain vigilant and supportive when someone shows signs of being abused. Rosie's death is a heartbreaking reminder that change is urgently needed in how society responds to domestic violence. While it is tragically too late for Rosie and her children, it is not too late to save others. The lessons from this story must serve as a call to action, for stronger protections, quicker responses, and greater compassion for victims. What are your thoughts on this case? Share them in the comments below. And if you found this story impactful, please like, share, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this.